First and foremost, energy, metals, minerals, fertilizer, and food are the businesses to be in now. Nothing else. That's where you put your money. AI is a bubble. SpaceX is a bubble. Energy disruption always detonates financial markets. The war is not over. The structure of the world is not yet changed. It's changing, but it has not reset. Will it reset? Yes. Iran has won the war. The United States has lost the war. Israel has not won the war. It has not yet completely lost the war, but it will. Whatever we sign shortly thereafter, the Israelis will resume the offensive. Iran will respond by attacking Israel. The pressure on President Trump to re-engage in support of Israel will be overwhelming. He will be pressured to re-engage. And whenever he goes in and whatever he does with our armed forces, once it's been done, he's going to say, I've done all I can't do anymore, and then he will begin disengaging. This was inevitable. There's an old expression, a ship is a fool to fight a fort. You could have brought the entire United States Navy along with the naval power of all of our allied nations, and we still would have lost. The topography, the geography, all of it was against us. And the Iranians have mastered the real revolution in military affairs. That is, they've linked all the space-based and the terrestrially based surveillance, intelligence, reconnaissance platforms to these thousands of ballistic missile platforms and cruise missiles and unmanned systems. And we can't possibly destroy them all, and they can reach all of us long before we reach them. And we engaged thinking that we could do all of this without ground forces. And then we decided, well, we may need ground forces. And we discovered something we've all known for a long time. We don't really have an army. We have a gesture, not the real thing. Where do we go from here? Short term, you've got to be prepared of oil to go back up again. Will it ever come down? Well, it's going to take some time because, first of all, you're going to extract all the oil that you can, and you're going to put that oil into your strategic reserves. We will do that. The Japanese will do that. The Chinese will do that. Everybody will do that in the advanced world. And in the developing world, especially the global south, where there were no reserves, they're going to build reserves. So the demand for oil, the demand for natural gas, the demand for all the energy that can be created is going to dramatically outstrip the supply. And as long as there is more demand than supply, the price of those things is going to go up. The Indians, the Japanese, the Chinese are all going to run their plants on coal. If you're in coal, you're very smart and you want to deliver as much of it as you possibly can because the world needs it. And some of it will be thrown straight into the furnace and burned to power plants, but a lot of it will be liquefied. In addition to that, nuclear power is going to be on the agenda. And the states which have maintained their nuclear power stations are very fortunate. And you're stuck. You have to go back to whatever you can find in the meantime. But in the meantime, what you have is all you're going to get because it takes time and capital to build refineries. It takes time and capital to drill. It takes time and capital to mine. These things are all going to be at a premium. Everything else is fugazi, but energy, metals, minerals, fertilizer, and food, that's where you want to be. The world we live in today is changing, and structurally it's going to look very, very in the future because especially in the Middle East, the first thing that you're going to see is that all of the arrangements that we and our British and French allies reached in the Middle East after World War I, and then subsequently were reaffirmed only this time largely under American leadership after World War II, are all going to disintegrate. All the states that you see today on the Arabian Peninsula really are largely artificial. Before the First World War, yes, you had various Arab tribes that had areas of concentration and influence, but real modern states in the sense that we think of it didn't exist. These states can't protect themselves from determined enemy attack, wherever that comes from. We have now demonstrated conclusively that we cannot protect them. That means that they're going to have to search elsewhere for friends and allies that can help protect them. Now, who are those friends and allies? Well, believe it or not, they're going to have to come to terms with Iran. Iran is on the road to becoming a great power. There's another great power in the neighborhood that is sitting on the sidelines. It's called Turkey. And the Turks have the largest military force. They also have substantial scientific industrial base, everything from nuclear power to steel production. They are in a position to engage. As it becomes clear that Iran has won, and as we Americans disengage from the region, which we will do, we are not going to go back into the Persian Gulf. pour billions of dollars into new facilities and new bases that we cannot protect. It's not going to happen. So we're going to pull out. When we pull out, Iran rises as the leading Islamic power, and it becomes clear that Israel is now largely on its own, and it too cannot protect itself any longer. The Turks will engage. What are the Turks going to do? Well, they're going to crush the Kurds. Guess who else wants to be done with the Kurds? Iran. But my point is, the truth is telling us that long term, right now, as I see the forces developing across the region and around the world, there's no future for Israel in the Middle East. Now, the rest of the world has watched what has happened to us, and they've said, well, these Americans have turned out to be incapable of coping with this new revolution in military power. They can't protect us. That means if you're in Japan, we can't protect the Japanese. If you're in Korea, we can't protect the Koreans. If you want to start a war over Taiwan's independence, you can't protect Taiwan. So that means we're probably going to be invited to leave most places where we currently garrison. In other words, this American military hegemony, which has become global in the last 80 years, is going to go away. Now, we've already seen the outlines of this departure in Europe. But I think the handwriting's on the wall. We can't protect Europe from the kind of military power that we've seen employed in Iran, and the Russians have plenty of it. The Russians are actually the original creators of this ISR strike capability. You've got to go back to the 1970s. You look at the work of Marshal Ogarkov and his brain trust, especially Mahmoud Gareev. These men put together everything that you've seen in Iran, only they envisioned something even more powerful and profound, and that was orbiting around the planet, which means that we're probably going to see either new treaties or agreements regarding what can happen in space, or if we're very stupid and we refuse to cooperate with these new treaties and new agreements, then we'll see enormous weapons platforms appear in space, which can target as instantly as anything you've seen in Iran, anything that comes within 1,000 miles of anybody's territory. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that we usually treat military power as something separate from everything else. But in reality, military power, economic prosperity, science, technology, all of these things are inextricably intertwined. We no longer have a monopoly on many of the things that we've enjoyed for the last 80 years. And these things are proliferating. And it's not just Iran. And the point is, you cannot do business in the future if you're an American the way you did in the past, which also suggests that we have to turn back to the economic sector. And that brings me back to where everything started. And energy, metals, minerals, fertilizer, and food are the stuff of everything. You can't operate as a civilization without those. If you can't secure those, you're going to go under. So I think what will ultimately happen long term is it will come home to the United States. We'll come back to the Western Hemisphere, and we will focus on exactly those things. And that's a good thing, because we haven't focused there for a long time. And it's interesting that President Trump, who promised to do that, has violated his promise. And he's now put us in a very serious position. Fitch published a statement about the creditworthiness of the United States and its economy, and it was pretty grim. And I think we're now on this sort of decline financially and economically, but we're going to hit a point where the decline then becomes a sudden drop. And I think we're going to find ourselves into something akin to a depression. These are the big trends. And I think the Europeans, their governments haven't all figured it out, but I think the Europeans have figured it out. And if I were you as a Dutchman, I would find whoever wants to eliminate your agricultural sector and hang that person and get back to cultivating the kinds of crops that you have in the past, because it's going to be gold. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve is being drawn down very quickly, and we're going to get to the point where we cannot draw it down any further by the fall. Now, that could come earlier. It could come at the beginning of August or the end of August. So that's the first thing. He knows that. All of our refineries right now are operating at peak performance. We have not built a new refinery in over 25 years. Pretty soon, it's going to be very difficult for us to refine the oil and export it. And so we may see a situation where the president intervenes and bans any more exports because of the position we're in with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Those things have an impact. You disrupt the energy markets, the financial markets react. We're not going to suffer as badly as perhaps other countries, but everybody is in a very similar position in that regard. And we've talked about the fertilizer problem, the absence of sulfuric acid, which means that you can't refine a lot of the minerals that you need to, the absence of nitrogen, you can't develop the fertilizer. All of these things continue to plague us. We're seeing record bankruptcies in the agricultural sector. He knows that. And finally, he knows that inflation has continued to climb. Wars breed inflation. I remember when people said gold will never reach 4,000. Impossible. And then they've said, oh, it'll never reach 6,000. Listen, we're going to see it hit 10,000. Now, is there an alternative to it? Yes, I think you're going to see something like Bitcoin that will be utilized as an alternative to the dollar for transactional reasons, as a way to create and sustain private credit. But ultimately, gold will be the coin of the realm. There's no question about it. So at this stage, I would say to anybody that's thinking about investing in it, there is no ceiling for your purposes. The long-term outlook is all positive and up. And these sort of temporary corrections and then restarts back up the ladder are going to continue. I think Bitcoin, as a transactional means of doing business, because it's very hard to move gold tonnage from point to point. The Chinese, as you know, have set up vaults for that purpose in Riyadh and Hong Kong so that they can literally physically move the gold around from whatever country has purchased whatever they wanted in terms of petroleum or something else. We still call the dollar the reserve currency, and it will, at least in the popular imagination, remain that for a while, simply because there's so many dollars out there. So much is denominated in dollars, and so much business still carries on in dollars. But ultimately, it's gold will become the reserve currency.